I'm Rob Skinner, and this is the Rob Skinner Podcast. Today I'm talking to Don and Mie Lee. Don and Mie are retired, but are missionaries working in Eastern Europe. They had professional careers and after retirement decided to go on mission. Find out about their experience today on the Rob Skinner Podcast. Welcome back to the Rob Skinner Podcast. My goal is to inspire you to live a no regrets life, make this life count, and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. Don and Mie, welcome to the program.
Hi.
Thank you. Rob, I have to tell you, a couple years ago, this is true confession, when you started those podcasts during the pandemic, after probably about 50 of them, I wondered, I wonder if maybe one year I'd get to be on the Rob Skinner podcast, and though here we are.
And here you are. Here you are. It is great to talk to you guys. I'm just so thankful and inspired by what you're doing. Look forward to talking about your work there in Eastern Europe. But Mia, I've known you for probably the longest. When Pam and I moved to Japan in 1993, you were
Yes.
there. You were a Christian,
Mm.
and look forward to talking more about that. How'd you guys become Christians?
So I became a Christian in my second semester freshman year at Duke University. Two of my older sisters were baptized in the traditional Church of Christ in high school. And so when I went to Duke, one of those sisters was a senior and I was a freshman, and she brought me to Soul Talk, as it was called back then, and she set me up to meet Wyndham Shaw, the campus minister at NC State. And that was the beginning of my spiritual journey.
What year was that?
I was baptized February 15th, 1976.
Wow. Did you say 1976?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, you've been a Christian almost 50 years, Don.
Coming up, yes. I'm old.
Okay. How old are you?
I am 68.
Wow. Okay. And Mia, if you don't mind, I know I got your permission to ask beforehand. How old are you?
16.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
What awesome. Thank you for taking the time to be on my program on your birthday. That's fantastic. Mia, how did you become a Christian?
Let's see. When I was in college, I prayed Jesus into my heart at Oxford in England. Then I became a diplomat. I worked for the Japanese Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And that took me, we did a lot of international conferences. And one of the conferences was held in Jamaica. And I felt like I should go to church on Sunday. And there was a church meeting in the hotel I was at, Wyndham Hotel in Kingston, Jamaica. And that's where I was met and I studied the Bible.
What year was that?
1988.
Do you remember who was preaching?
Jimmy Rogers.
Jimmy Rogers?
Yes,
Okay. Jimmy Rogers from Boston? That Jimmy Rogers?
yes. Jimmy and Maria Rogers were leading the church and they studied with
They
me.
were leading. Oh, they were leading the church in Kingston, Jamaica. Okay, boy, I didn't know that. Wow. Okay, that's pretty awesome. Okay, so let's back this up. So you went to Oxford. Okay, you went to Duke, which is the Harvard of the South, and then Mia, you went to Oxford. Okay, how in the world, like Oxford? Wow. Okay, where did you go to undergraduate in Japan?
I did not. My dad was a diplomat. So I went to high school in England, and the teacher said, "Why don't you study for the Oxford Cambridge exam?" And then I got in. So
So
direct.
you did your undergraduate work at Oxford,
Yes.
and then did you do any graduate work after that?
Well, many years later, I went to law school.
I see. I just remember when we were in Japan, we were all in awe because you worked for, wasn't it MIDI?
Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that would be MOFA,
Okay,
not
MFA.
our.
Okay, okay, Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
So
We
that
were
would
all in
be
awe, like, Well, she's in the government. And didn't you know the princess also? I mean, you had a connection there, I thought.
Yeah, because I was in the protocol division, whenever the royal family traveled, we took care of their travel. So, yes.
I think what
Wow.
Rob was mentioning, Princess
Masako.
Masako.
Yes, before she got married, she was also a diplomat. Yes, and we were friends.
That's pretty amazing. That's talk about hobnobbing. That's really impressive. Okay, so you became a Christian in Kingston, Jamaica. Then you came back and were in Japan. Okay, and then how did you guys meet
Yes.
each other?
We like to kid around that we had an arranged marriage in the Asian tradition. I mean, my parents had an arranged marriage, and I used to think, what? But as I got older as a Christian, that idea didn't sound as crazy as it was. But basically, Frank and Erica Kim, mostly Erica, and Chris and Allison Jacobs, they were sort of doing the scheming on the back end to introduce us. On a business trip I had to Japan once to meet with Chris Jacobs to talk about World Sector Administration, Erica had invited me over there under the guise of having a nice dinner, but I think she was secretly interviewing me to check me out to see if I would be a suitable spouse for Mia-san.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so we better back it up. Maybe you guys can just talk a little bit about what was going on before, from the time you graduated until that time. Don, you graduated from Duke. I'm assuming you're Chinese American, born in the States.
Yes, my parents are from China. I was born in the States, outside of Boston, actually.
Okay. So raised in the Boston area, then you went to Duke. And can you talk a little bit about what you did once you graduated from college until the time you met Mie?
Yeah, so I grew up on the East Coast, grew up around Boston, went down to Florida for junior high school, college at Duke, graduated, and actually moved back to Boston after I graduated. And I moved back 2 weeks before the McKeans moved into town. I worked at the time, I was an engineering major from Duke, so I had an engineering job for 7 years with RCA Corporation. And then I got laid off, and then I got hired as an intern with Boston, and then went to Hong Kong on the mission team in September of 1987.
Okay, so you were in Boston during the time of revival from 79, which was kind of the start of the Boston church, all the way. So you got to see all of that.
I was there.
That's amazing. You're just like a library of historical events. I mean, you've seen all of that. It must have been incredible. Seeing the start of the church, and I think Albert told me that at the time, the Boston church was growing for 10 years at 60% per year. What was it like to be a part of that, Don?
Well, it started from zero. I remember the first time I landed in Boston and went to a midweek in that small, rickety Lexington Church of Christ building, and there was just, I don't know, maybe less than 10 or 15 people there at midweeks. It didn't start off that gloriously.
That's before.
Yes, but from that point, it was like a rocket ship. Just being in the singles ministry. I think at one point the singles group got to about 400 people, and it was just an amazing time seeing the growth. You were just seeing people coming out. The fellowship was like this huge magnet. When people came in, they were just drawn to this amazing fellowship. It was pretty amazing times.
Okay, so then did you know Doug Arthur? I think he was connected to Duke. Lynn Green, I know I'm name dropping a little bit. Did you have friends?
Doug Arthur was down there. Lynn Green was there. Scott Green was at UNC right next door. Doug Jacoby was in my dorm. Jim McCartney, Gary Knudsen. There were a lot of people down there in North Carolina.
Wow. Okay, that must have been pretty exciting. So you graduated and then you headed up to Boston. What inspired you to go on the Hong Kong mission team?
It actually started from a trip to China that I took with my parents in 1980. My parents had left China many years before that, and this was their first trip back to China since they got married. And I was the only person under 50 years old on that trip. Everybody was over 50, people going back to their villages and where they grew up, and I was the only young one. I was probably the youngest one there, and on that trip, I just saw a lot of the emptiness. I told my parents at the end of our 6-week trip, hey, one day I'd like to go back there as a missionary. And they rolled their eyes and they gasped. But 7 years later, I was in Hong Kong. That's where it started.
That's amazing. Wow. Did you speak any Chinese before you went to Hong Kong?
So what little Chinese I knew was a Chinese dialect, a sub-dialect of Cantonese. So I was in Chinese school with the other white folks when we went to Hong Kong, and when they heard my Chinese, they said my Chinese had all the tones backwards because of the other dialect that I knew or was familiar with.
Okay. All right. So, okay. So you went on that mission team. Can you just talk, how did that mission team go? Like what kind of, what did you see in terms of growth and in terms of miracles? You were there in 88. I remember when Scott was in San Francisco that summer, Scott and Lynn, they stayed there for a summer in San Francisco when I was there. And then they went and planted that church. What are some of the things you saw in that mission planting?
Probably the first thing I remember is because half the team could not speak Cantonese when we went there. It became sort of our mantra after a very short time that we would say, love is the international language. I mean, some of us would butcher Chinese. The ones that were local, they would translate, they would be helping with the studies a lot. But it became very apparent as the church grew and people kept coming out. It wasn't because we spoke Chinese so well, it was really because of the love. And that's why we said, hey, love is the international language. That's communicated whether you could speak fluently or not. And so that was the magic that brought people in. We started at school, Chinese school on the campus at Chinese University of Hong Kong, and that's where we had our first Bible talk there at Bethlehem Hall. And it was really slow at first. I think we had, in the first 4 months, the rest of 87, I think we had maybe 4 baptisms. We thought we were awful. I thought, what's happening? Nothing's happening like all these other places around the world. Scott and Lynn, they really built the church well, used the phrase building with costly stones, and he was always about building quality. Slow and steady wins the race. And I think after a time, the next year, things started to really crank. And so by the time we left in 10 years later, the church was about 2,000.
That's amazing. So just how many people were on the original team with you?
I believe it was 17.
Wow. Okay, so from 17 to 2000. Aside from the love and the focus on love, building on costly stones, anything else that would be transferable to a mission planting today? Those were like really great principles that helped spur the growth and the health of the church.
Well, one of the ones that I've actually talked with Sean Wooten about was just the size of the team. We had enough critical mass as opposed to some of the later plantings at the end of the 6-year plan that they were really small and maybe a few couples, maybe 6 people at most. Having 17 people that were really tied together and working together had enough critical mass to really demonstrate family. You brought people in. There was a lot of people that worked together as a team. It was a family, tight-knit community that was really obvious and drew people in. I think just building things with quality, not trying to push things, not trying to just baptize people for the sake of baptizing people, but really making sure people understood things. I think we benefited also from being on the foreign mission field that back in a lot of the early days, ministry people often got rotated and moved around between churches. But being in Hong Kong, since it was Chinese, not anybody could just switch in there and get retrained or move around. And so basically the mantra was, we have to grow our own. We're not going to get any help from the USA or any of the other big churches out there because most of them could not speak Chinese. So we had to grow our own. So that was the focus, that we had to build the church.
Build your own.
Yeah, we called it build your own.
Yeah.
And so that's what Scott and Lynn really focused on doing, raising up, the talented ministry potential people from the campus in Hong Kong.
Mm.
And, bit by bit over time, it started to build and just grow more and more momentum. So it just started taking off on that.
But the level of talent of those first few converts is really remarkable. I mean, I can just remember a few of the names, Philip and Pandora Lamb. My gosh, I can't remember, but I just remember like so many of those people just they went on to be major leaders. Was there any intentionality about that? I mean, what do you attribute that to? So many of those early converts ended up going and planting churches in mainland China. What was happening there?
There was a concerted effort. I mean, we focused on the campus, first of all, obviously, because we were all on campus. And, if you can convert people at that stage of their lives, the whole trajectory of their lives gets changed. And so just all those campus students, I mean, they were very talented, naturally, because they were in university. In Hong Kong, China, all those universities, they were very competitive just to get in. It was just a pool of very talented people to just reach out to where we were at Chinese school. Yeah, the amazing thing, we took a trip back to Hong Kong in January with Lynn Green, and we sort of had a reunion. We saw so many people from just the early years. They're still faithful. They still have the dream for China. Many of them are starting to go back there to retire because it's cheaper and they want to still reach out. It's pretty amazing just seeing some of those early disciples that have just stayed with it and still have the dream. It's just inspiring to us.
Let's switch the scenario to Japan. Mia, you were converted in 88. I know that there were some planternships going on in Japan around that time with Randy and Kay McKean. I think they were there for a little bit. And then Frank came in 88 or 89. Isn't that right?
Yes. So
What was
when
it
I
like there?
came,
I
sorry.
showed up in 93, so about 4 or 5 years had passed from the replanting of the church there in Tokyo. Can you talk a little bit about what it was like in those early days there in the Tokyo church?
So several months after I was baptized and joined the Tokyo church, Frank and Erica came. And then we were sort of officially launched at a big conference. But when I came, it was before that. And George and Irene Ganis were there. And Irene was lighting a stove in the hope that people who came for a baptism would be warm enough. And then the baptistry was filled with water, and people were trying to boil kettles of water to try to make the baptistry water not so freezing. It was very primitive. And there were about 20 young men aged 18 or younger. Well, I exaggerate. Maybe a few of them were 20, but all young ladies. And then me, I was 31. And
So
that's how the
you
church.
must have felt like you were like the old timer there at 31 with all these young people.
Well, I figured it's great to have a group of people who love God in this,
Hmm.
I thought, a very heathen world of
Yeah.
Japan. So at that point, I did not complain that I was much older than everyone. But many years later, when someone was converted who was older than me, I heaved a sigh of relief.
Okay, let me just back it up a little bit. Okay, I do need to make a comment. I remember at the old building before they tore it down and built the new building, which is beautiful. I remember meeting there, and in the winter, it was so cold. It was like a barn. I mean, it was so primitive. And they had those, I think the word was stobu, like the toyu or kerosene stoves to heat it. And I mean, just pretty much an open flame. Just talk about a fire hazard. You just it's kind of essentially one step up from having an open burn barrel right there in the main hall. It was just so drafty and cold. But anyway,
Yeah,
Japan
we
is less
fellowshipped
than
around the kerosene stove. We warm
exactly.
our
I know.
hands
I just remember
and we fellowship around the stove.
Japanese people are so tough. I mean, they're definitely tough and sturdy people. So, how did you come to faith growing up? I mean, there's so, in my impression of being in Japan, it's such a spiritual wasteland. I mean, there's such a void of spiritual influence. How did you come to faith in Jesus?
Now, I grew to understand that Japanese people they're not Christian, but they are spiritual. But anyway, my parents wanted me to go to a good school, and a good school meant a mission school. So they sent me starting from kindergarten to a school that was built by Canadian missionaries. So in kindergarten, we had books, picture books about Jesus, and we learned to pray to God. And as a young child, I accepted all that. I guess I believed in God. But then I believed in Santa Claus too. So it was, I was young. So that was my first Christian influence.
That's great. So, essentially, it was your early indoctrination into the teachings about Jesus. Okay. Yeah, I didn't mean to run down the Japanese culture, but the lack of Christian influence in Japan is notable. It's remarkable. And so you are definitely in the ultra minority to have faith at an early age, for sure. Okay, so you guys met. What year did you guys meet?
We met in April or May of 1993. It
Okay.
was a world sector leader and administrator meeting in Tokyo. That's when we first met.
Okay. And what year did you guys get married?
The next year.
Within a year.
About a year later.
94.
Okay. So you guys are coming from totally different cultures. Don, you're American. Yeah, you're Japanese, technically you're Chinese, Japanese. Those countries have had their conflicts in the past, obviously. What was it that really brought you guys together? What was it that attracted you to each other?
I would say just because we could talk and communicate really well. I think what you said about the background, it's true. When we first met and we grew in our relationship, I was afraid my parents would not approve because my mom had fled China when Japanese was invading. But I think maybe they got so desperate because I have five sisters and I was the only boy. They were just glad that I was going to get married. But no, we were just able to communicate really well. That's been our bedrock ever since we've been married. We have great communication. She's my best friend. We just talk all the time. And that was
Yeah.
probably the biggest thing. Although at first I was not drawn to her, to be honest.
What's that?
At first I was not drawn to her. After the first
date.
date, I was not. And she actually had to call and ask for another chance.
What was the turning point? What changed?
Well, when she called back for a second chance, that sort of caught my attention because that seemed very un-Japanese. It
Right.
stuck out to me that she would be that bold to basically ask for another chance for a date. And then by the end of the week, we went out again. And then 3 weeks later in Hong Kong, we had back in those days, Hong Kong, we had these church banquets, and it was sort of like a special dating time. And I invited her to come down from Japan for that. And then I was smitten, and then I chased her all over the world in Europe to pursue her.
Yeah, I had
That's
to go
awesome.
on.
Mia, I want to ask you this question. When you were growing up, from the time that you were born till, let's say, college age, how many years did you spend abroad as opposed to living in Japan?
It was about half and half, in and out,
I
in
see.
and out.
How did that make you feel in terms of, I know that I heard from people who were Japanese who lived abroad that when they came back, there was somewhat of a dissonance or a feeling of being kind of an outsider. Did you experience any of that?
I did. So when I went to New York age 5, came back age 9, suffered this terrible culture shock. Yeah. And I've never really recovered from it. Yeah.
When you say culture,
Mia is probably more comfortable being outside of Japan than living inside of Japan.
But when I became a disciple and lived in Tokyo as a disciple with the Tokyo Church of Christ, I was totally in. Like I wasn't resisting being in Japan.
can you explain what that was? What caused that?
The culture shock? Is that your question? Well, I was in New York and learned to freely speak my mind. And when I did that in a Japanese classroom, the teacher did not like it. Also, in New York, I would get out of the apartment and walk to school nearby. There, I had to wear a uniform, put on a very heavy satchel, and ride 2 trains and a bus to get to school. It was very tiring. It's a kind of a social thing and a physical thing. Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay. So can you guys give just an overview of where you've been since the time you were married? And I know you guys were in the States. So can you just give an overview of your working career?
So Hong Kong, I was there 10 years, and then we got married, and so she was in Hong Kong with me for the last 3 years of that 10. So in 1997, we moved back to Seattle with Scott and Lynn Green. At that point, that year, Hong Kong was being given back from UK to China, and the Greens felt it wise to leave Hong Kong, because we were outsiders, we were from America. At that time, we handed over the leadership of Hong Kong to the locals, and we moved back to the States. And so we've been in Seattle since 1997. So we've been in Seattle in one place, probably the longest stop of our lives, where we are in Seattle. So that's where we still live.
Okay. So, and what did you do for work then?
So we worked for the church for a little bit in administration, and we got out, I I think early 2003. And then for the last 21 years, I worked as a financial planner. And
I worked for the University of Washington for a little bit, and then I worked for Nintendo, the gaming company.
Were you doing game design or?
I was doing translating and interpreting because they're a Japanese company, and they have to communicate with the, company in the States.
Got it. Got it. They must have loved having you with your resume. What an incredible and impeccable resume that you have. So that's awesome. Okay, so when did you guys retire? When did you guys just hang it up and say, okay, we're done with our secular world, secular career?
February 28th this year for me.
And then April 1st for me.
Of this year?
Yes.
So you guys just retired. Okay. I'm sorry I didn't ask. How many kids do you guys have? Do you guys have children?
Two.
Okay. And how old are they and where are they at?
Our son is 25 and our daughter is 20. Our son is working, learning adulting, and our daughter is in her junior year of university.
At the University of Washington?
Western Washington University in Bellingham.
Okay, that's rain country. That's where it rains a lot. Okay.
She
And their
doesn't
names
mind.
are
Jonathan and Jocelyn.
Jonathan and Jocelyn. Okay. Okay. Now that we're up to the present day, how did you get the idea to go on a mission, go back on the mission field? You've been in country back in the States for 28 years. I mean, you're set, your kids are there. Where did you get this wild idea? Hey, well, let's go on mission again.
Well, so while in Seattle, probably in the the Greens got the idea to go back to the mission field. They went to Germany. And there was another couple in our region, Alcides and Leslie Marias, that had been on the mission field in Brazil. They came back, had their kids to grow up and finish school, and then they went back to Brazil on the mission team. And just examples like that sort of just put the seeds in my head that, okay, we can't now, but maybe later when we retire, we could do something like that. In the 2016 REACH conference in St. Louis, there was a class, I think by Chris Stathian, who I knew from the singles days in Boston. He was teaching a class about work that they've been doing in Eastern Europe. And so I went and reconnected with him, sort of followed him and Sean and what they've been doing from afar for the last several years. And then when the war in Ukraine came on, more and more high profile with things going on in Eastern Europe. So as we were getting closer and closer to retirement, it's always been in my mind, say, okay, how can we still be useful? Because I think when we're both working and raising kids, we probably weren't the most sharp spiritually and doing the most. We were sort of surviving. And as the kids grew older and we got closer toward the end of working, we were just trying to figure out how could we be useful to God somewhere. And as we got closer to retirement, we had a checklist of so many things to pray about, so many sort of signs that we were looking for when we pulled the trigger to retire. But one of them was most, where can we be most useful? And so a couple of years ago, we had a Zoom meeting with Chris, and we were asking him, tell us about this role in Eastern Europe. Tell us more. What about this? And he said, I can answer your questions till I'm blue in the face. Why don't you just take a visit there? And so last year, 30th anniversary, we took 3 days in Paris for our anniversary, and then we took 3 days in Bucharest, Romania, to meet with Sean and Lena just to ask them questions. Hey, could we be useful? Could you work with our schedule, with our health limitations? Could we be useful? And they said yes to both questions. And so I think 3 days after we returned, during my quarterly review, I put in my notice that I wanted to begin my retirement transition, which took about six. And then I think 8 days after my wife finally retired, then we packed our bags and took off for
Bulgaria.
Wow. And that's where you're at now in Bulgaria, in Sofia?
Yes.
Beautiful city. Oh my gosh. I went there this last spring and it's incredibly beautiful. That mountain right in the, I didn't realize how mountainous it is, or, it's a little bit like living in Tokyo when you can view Mount Fuji from nearby, just right there in the outskirts of town. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's just talk about your experience. First of all, why Eastern Europe? I mean, you guys are both Asian. Why not go back to Asia or something else? Like, what was the attraction of going to Eastern Europe?
We had several options about what to do when we retire, and one of them was going to Japan to live. But when we explored the option, the doors closed. And God can guide you through closed doors too. Actually, my dad preferred that I not live there. It's kind of strange, but it's an earthquake zone, and he thought it was dangerous for me, and that's his reason. Although Seattle is also an earthquake zone, but I didn't tell him that. But anyway, there was a kind of financial thing that happened that closed the door. So we did try various options.
And Hong Kong doesn't need us. They don't need us anymore. I mean, they're big. They got places in China. I mean, they don't need us. And coming over here, yes, I agree with you. Never would have thought in the world ending up in Eastern Europe of all places.
Yeah.
I could probably count on my hand how many different Asian faces I've seen since I've been here. But the need was great, and we thought, hey, we can help.
And so there was something organized, because Sean was running Revive, and so a team of young people would go to a city, a church that welcomed them. But he also wanted at least a pair of one older couple. He says two now, but anyway, at least one older couple in the mix of the young people. Apparently, he says things go better when there's an older couple in the mix, and when there isn't, something could go wrong. So it's empirical. We don't know why, but so there was actually a place for us. It's called Caleb Couple. So there was
Caleb
an
couple.
effort, and there was a call. They wanted more, quote, Caleb couples. And we're like, hey, we could do that. So we didn't have to pioneer anything. We just had to apply.
That's great. Well, when did you guys arrive there? When did you guys land in Sofia?
April 9th.
April 9th, and then after summer, we came back again.
We came for about 2 months in the spring just so to get our feet wet. And then that's because I retired earlier. We had earlier time, so we came for the tail end of Revive 5.0 just to get our feet wet. Went home for the summer, and then we came back here in September. We'll go back for the winter, and then we'll come back in the spring. So when we talked with Sean and Melinda, I mean, the winters are really hard on my wife health-wise, so we said we can't come for the whole 10 months straight. Would you settle for 2 or 3 months in the fall, 2 or 3 months in the spring? Would that work? And they said, yeah. So we said, okay, we'll do it.
Okay. So what have you seen? Like, share some stories. What's been exciting? How have you seen God working there in Sofia?
Well, the first thing I would say, being an older Christian, there's so many big churches in the USA. And I mean, yeah, there's always needs in the church. I could do Bible talk, I could help here. I mean, there's so many ways I could still do things to help, but there's a lot of people that could do that. We've lived overseas, we can afford to do it. Being here, the need is so great. I mean, we can give marriage help, we can give parenting help. The young people on the Revive team, we can just give assurance. We can help walk them through the ups and downs of just being in a foreign country, foreign language, new places, something that they've never experienced, as well as maybe they're young in the faith and they don't know how to handle some of these things that they've never faced before. It's really just great to feel useful in a way that maybe I haven't felt for quite a number of years. And it tests our faith too. Just, everything's new for us. Different language, different culture. How do you buy something in the grocery store? How do you figure out the transportation? And then it tests our faith too. But being around young people energizes us. It tests us. I feel like I'm growing more spiritually than I have for a long time. I know I have less energy, so I'm praying more and I'm seeing prayer work more powerfully than I have in a long time. Just sort of being around something where people are really pushing to grow and trying their best. It's inspiring to be here.
And you don't have to be a Superman. You just have to be spiritual and loving. So when the Revive team gets together, there's the young people and us. And without us, it'll just be a group of young people. But with us, we're family. Because a family has older people and younger people. I do think it works better that way. And then we can reach out to the marrieds in the church. We can, they're too young. So we play dual roles of encouraging the young people and helping the marrieds in the church. But we don't do anything extraordinary. We don't stay up all night studying the Bible or anything. We, in fact, adjust our schedule according to our age and health. We don't, the young people do something all day and they're on mission hours on end.
Right.
And we pray when they're doing that. We go
Right.
on mission sometimes. Apparently, that is not our main role. So when they're going out, we pray for them, and they really like that.
I see. See,
Yeah, a
you kind
lot.
of
It
provide
depends on what
a
city you're
mom and
in.
dad kind of oversight, just kind of a warm, loving presence there for the mission team.
Yeah, our role
Yeah.
also has been to encourage the existing members, the married families here, because a lot of these small churches in Eastern Europe, I mean, they've been around for 25, 30 years, but they haven't grown for a while. And so, they have some very veteran, faithful disciples, but, if you've gone for that long a period of time without things growing and seeing, the miracles of a baptism and seeing these things happen for a while, it does sort of ebb away at your faith. So we've been just here, just trying to encourage people in their faith, help with them to do the basic things, the quiet times, try to reach out, try to, serve, just these basic things. But really, we've been just encouraging them. It's not like I have to have been, a ministry for 15 years or an elder or, I mean, we're just regular Christians, just
Right.
trying to encourage another Christian. That we can do.
How did you how did you overcome the thought like, hey, we're too old, we're over the hill, we don't have the energy we did, we're gonna have to leave our kids. I'm sure that there were a million thoughts that went through your mind. You've got a daughter who's 20, she's still in school. How did you like just overcome those mental barriers that must have been there as you considered this decision to go back overseas?
Well, we figured out that there's all kinds of exciting things we could do for God if we weren't holding down a 9 to 5 job. And then that led us to retire earlier than maybe originally planned because we thought, ooh, I don't know how long we can be, healthy and living abroad. If we can financially retire, let's retire earlier and spend the years we have with energy doing
Yeah,
it. One
that's
day
right.
we won't be able to. Yeah. And then we just adjust for our age. It's like we
Yeah,
won't
just
stay
making
very late at this. We will leave early. Yeah,
I would say also, I mean, people our age, and you see people, we see people all the time. People are dying, people we know they're getting health challenges. I know I could be gone tomorrow. I'm very aware of that. And I thought, gee whiz, I have a small window of opportunity that I'm still healthy. I can still get around. I want to make my life count. I mean, hey, if I can do something now, let me do it, And so once all the checklists on the thing that we were praying for about, retiring, moving, all that, once all those things got checked, it was pretty quick. And if you ask my wife, I'm a very slow decision maker, but because we had prayed and fasted and we're very specific about all these things that needed to happen before we pushed that button. Once they all lined up, I acted probably quicker than
really
she
quickly.
would have thought because it just became very clear that, hey, now's the time to do it.
And you mentioned our daughter. She is, as you say, still in college and she's not a disciple. And so we make sure to take care of her. If we need to go home from Bulgaria earlier to make sure to pick her up in college, we do that. We tell her, you do come first, let us know, do we need to be there? And we are there. So we're balancing our daughter's needs. And so we are given a little more flexibility as to when we come and go because we also need to meet the needs of our daughter.
Right, right. I'm inspired by what you've chosen to do. Like for those listening who are thinking, maybe they're nearing retirement age or in retirement, but have a lot of fears and anxiety about stepping out in faith and maybe doing missionary work, whether in Eastern Europe or somewhere else. Can you give some guidance? Any thoughts? What helped you? What advice would you give to a person who's thinking about doing something like what you've done?
Well, what we did at first, we just had phone calls with people we knew that had done it or were thinking about it, just because we had lots of questions. Anybody that has questions, they could contact us. We'd be glad to sit down and answer their questions or share more in detail. If it goes a little bit further, hey, take a visit, take a vacation there and just check it out and see the work, as well as, probe a little bit further. Those would be two easy ways just to touch the water a little bit, just to sort of see if it's maybe something to consider.
And what we did and what we recommend is to start praying about your retirement early. And then, because as we did that, things gradually fell into place.
Yeah, I would say that the 2 years leading up to us pulling the trigger to retirement was an incredible spiritual journey. I mean, we had things that we prayed consistently about. We fasted. We kicked the tires on so many of the options, and some of them opened, some of them closed. And when it finally came down to the final days, everything became really clear, and it became very easy for us to decide, because we had been praying and thinking and asking questions for a couple years about that.
That's awesome. That's great. Are they still looking for older disciples or volunteers in Eastern Europe?
Yes,
If you're
I would make my shameless plug, Rob, that hey, there's such a big need here. I mean, if you can't come or come visit, pray. If you maybe still couldn't come, but you have resources, hey, every dollar can help here. It can help a lot. But I know that there's hundreds of people my age in the kingdom out there. Many of them won't be able to come because they got family responsibilities, special needs, they don't have the resources, or they don't have the help. But there's still people I know that maybe feel like us, like, hey, I hope God's not done with me now. I hope there's still ways that I can serve. Maybe I could do it there. I mean, certainly you could do it where you are. I mean, everybody needs to be useful wherever they are, but the need is so great here of just encouragement, help, people listening, people serving. There's just not enough.
Yeah.
I would love to talk to anybody that has even an inkling of interest to come.
Well, I'll make sure and put your contact information in the show notes so people could email you and talk to you more about it. But I think it's a great example, and it's such a huge need, because I think there's a peril, there's a danger as you get into 60 plus and you start thinking, okay, now I'm gonna have me time. I'm gonna have time to relax, and after I've been working my whole life, which is great and it makes sense. But at the same time, it's challenging to finish strong spiritually. And sometimes our mindset when it comes into retirement, it's not the most productive in terms of spirituality. It may be in terms of relaxation, let's travel here, let's hit the beach there, which nothing in moderation is bad. But we can start to feel like my days of being a spiritual soldier for Christ, a disciple of Christ, are kind of in my rearview mirror. And we stop thinking about, hey, I can make a legitimate contribution at this point in my life. And I think you look at so many people in the Bible, and they didn't finish strong. They started great, but they didn't finish strong. And so I think what you're doing there is something really powerful. Any thoughts on that? Any reflections?
Yes, I don't think we are taught what to do when we grow old at church, because most church leaders are younger than us. But there's a song that says, one day he got old, he couldn't fight anymore, but he had to stand up and fight anyhow.
That's right.
And I think we, as long as God gives us health, we're not retired from being a disciple, you
Right.
know? And if
That's
you
right.
can financially retire, that makes us full time,
That's right. I know.
God can do more with us.
Rob,
It
what you
reminds me
said,
of, go ahead.
what
Sorry.
you what you said strikes a nerve with me when you talked about, serving God is in the past. Is there anything in the future? Honestly, I got tired of sort of looking back in the past. Oh, hey, I was in the Gumpel's living room. I was in the Hong Kong mission. All this stuff is years ago. And inside, there's this sort of empty rot. It's like, well, what about now? I mean, is it all just in the past? Is there anything for me going forward? And yeah, it sort of scares me. If there's nothing left for me to do now, then what's the purpose of it all? So I think deep inside of all of us, we still want to be useful.
Yes.
And that was probably the biggest thing that I kept asking myself when I came to visit Sean. I said, can I be useful again? Because my heart aches for that. It's like, I just want to be useful again. And so
Right.
I found a spot where I could be useful.
We're
Yeah.
on the same page there. However, Don caught the Easter bug first, and I had to catch up. Although I've actually lived in Serbia before, it still sounded very strange. We're going where? How are we living? It sounded strange. And Don said, let's talk to people who've done it. And then once I talked to them, our major challenge was going shopping in a foreign country. I'm like, I can do that. That would not be a problem for me. It would be a great challenge. And so I'm like, okay, I'm with you. So sometimes the couples, their passion is not at the same place at first, but you can always kind of, yeah, get together.
Yeah. I'm reminded of George and Irene Gerganis, who planted that church in Tokyo, I believe in 1950, right after the war. And then they came back in their 60s to assist because George was still the president of the board and
Yes.
helped kind of reestablish that church. And I know that they were such an inspiration to the early members of the church. And I know you know them, but did that
When I was a young Christian, Irene was there, a mom, a grandma figure. It was very comforting. And then she said, I've been reading the Bible for so many years, but I'm still learning from it. And that really gave me assurance at the time. And maybe just the young people seeing us, meaning we're old as Christians, it's sort of visible evidence that, you can last this long.
That's
Maybe
right.
is, yeah, good.
That's awesome. Well, what advice would you give to a person who wants to make this life count?
Well, I think just asking that question over and over is something that I've always asked, hey, what can I do to make a difference? I think from day one till now, I've always asked that question. The other thing I would say is just look for the opportunities to serve. They're always there. If you look, they're always there. I mean, I look, in sports, they talk about the trophy for the winner and then maybe the second place, but the participation trophies nobody cares about. As a Christian, I've been just a participant my whole life. That means a lot. And I remember early days of Boston, just helping clean the building, pick up the songbooks, then later help with some of the accounting. Small, just looking for ways to serve, and then just doors open. And so I look back on almost 50 years. It's like, I can't believe what I've seen, the places I've been, and the opportunities I've had to serve in the kingdom. But it's just looking for ways to serve, and then the doors open.
Yeah, and about retirement, in Japan, when people reach a certain age, there's mandatory retirement, whether they like it or not. In the United States, there's no such thing, which means we have to decide when to retire. And I think there's an inertia. It's easier to just keep going, just keep working if you have a good workplace. But we figured out that if we can financially retire, we had better. Instead of spending all our time and energy at this company, then we can spend our time and energy for God. Once we make ourselves available, surely God will give us something to do.
Right. That's awesome. Just a more conscious and intentional view of retiring from your secular employment so that you can devote yourself to kingdom work and using your remaining energy to serve Him. It's very inspiring, and I respect you guys as a couple so much. It's really, really impressive. And I hope that whoever's listening will follow in your footsteps and choose to use their final years in service to the kingdom of God. It's impressive. It's like Caleb. It's like Joshua, Moses. Their best years were really their closing years, and so impressive. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much
Appreciate
for
it.
interviewing us.
Absolutely. And thank you for listening to the Rob Skinner podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please go to robskinner.com for more information about my books, about my podcast, about my blog. And I hope that you really are benefiting from listening today, because my goal is to inspire you to make this life count, live a no regrets life, and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. Have a great day and make this life count.